let's talk a little bit about hypermetabolism and eating disorder recovery. And so hyper means fast, meaning metabolism speeds up sometimes during eating disorder recovery. Now, for those of you who have watched our videos, you're probably like, wait a second, I thought you said that when you're restricting your intake or dealing with anorexia or another restrictive eating disorder that your metabolism drops. And you're right, it does. So let me explain. When you're actively restricting your intake or not taking in enough food for one reason or another, your metabolism is going to drop. It is going to adapt by coming down because it doesn't want to burn more than it's being given, right? It's essentially your body's protective measure to keep you alive during a period of starvation. However, there is this, and maybe you could use the word phenomena, that when someone starts to take in more food and they work towards recovery and they're in this process of changing those old restrictive patterns, what we see is that sometimes metabolism jumps up really high. And what that translates to is these people sometimes need to eat way more calories than you would think. Now, that poses its own challenges given what we see with people with eating disorders, that of course, it's not just as easy as eat more. But I wanted to point this out because I get a lot of people saying like, well, I'm eating 2,000 calories a day, I'm doing fine, but ultimately they really even need more than that because their body is still healing. So that's what we call hyper or fast metabolism during eating disorder recovery. And it's basically the body's way of getting you to really eat enough so that we can heal all of the damage that's happened from restrictive eating. Now, what I want to show you actually is a case study of someone who this happened to. Now, I'm just going to show you the body composition of this case study because I think that's important for you to see why we kept pushing this person to take in more food and how we kind of knew that that's what we needed to do, even though it seemed like a lot of food. Now, as you can see here, this is this person's body composition analysis over a period of time. Now, one thing I want to point out that's a little bit different than other body composition data that I have put on these case studies is I'm just showing you the lean mass and the muscle mass. Now, those two numbers should not add up to the total weight because muscle mass is actually a part of lean mass. So lean mass is basically everything in the body that's not fat. So that of course includes muscle. Now the reason I'm showing it to you this way is because this is really the main focus for someone who's recovering from an eating disorder. Oftentimes what we see is that this lean mass and muscle mass is below where it should be. And so the main focus in getting this person to recover and heal their body is getting that lean mass and muscle up to the normal range to prevent sometimes the symptoms and side effects that can happen from having a low lean mass and or muscle mass. Now, as you can see with this person, she's 5'5", and when she first came in, she was 112.2 pounds, which is pretty low for her. However, the more important thing to notice here is that her muscle mass was significantly too low. So you'll see I put down in red underneath this graph here, it says the normal range for muscle starts at 40.1 pounds. So that was the bottom number of the normal range for someone her similar age and height. And what we see is that her muscle mass is well below that at 33.9. Now, as I was just mentioning, that's what we want to improve. And the reason we want to improve that is because when your muscle mass is this low, it starts to impact things like your bone density. You're more likely to get injured or sick. You're more likely to deal with some of the issues later in life, like hormone imbalance and stuff like that from undereating. But especially at this person's age, she was in her 20s, we are really concerned for that bone density with her muscle mass being this low. So as I mentioned, the big goal here is going to be to improve that muscle mass and get it into the normal range. That is first and foremost what we have to do. And of course, how we're going to do that is actually through food. A little bit of an aside here, everybody says, well, doesn't that mean she should just be exercising more? And actually, no. Now, depending on different circumstances, you can exercise and that will help, but only if you're eating enough to fuel that exercise. What you would not want to do is exercise more, but not increase that intake with it. So this particular person, before coming in to see us, was eating about 800 to 1,000 calories a day, or really her thing was that she was just trying to keep her intake below 1,000 calories. She was exercising, doing primarily cardio for about 90 minutes, 5 days a week. She would take the other 2 days off. However, what she would do to compensate on those 2 days is eat even less calories. And sometimes those days the calories would only be about 500. So she was really restricting her intake and over-exercising. So needless to say, we had to get her to take in more. And what we first started with was about 15 to 1600 calories. Now, of course, that was challenging for her, but she was able to get up to that 15 to 1600 calories even within just a couple of weeks of that initial visit in November. So that was great. However, based on what we saw with her body composition, that muscle mass at 33.9 actually didn't really improve. It kind of stayed the same. It came up to 34, but like that was it. There wasn't really much of a change there. So we had to increase her calories again. So we brought her up to about 2,000 calories, okay? And this one was a little bit more challenging for her to increase, but she still felt like, okay, I get it, you know, I can get up to 2,000. I'm doing a lot of exercise because she kept up doing the 90 minutes, 5 days a week. However, flash forward a little bit, we still weren't seeing that muscle improve. At this point, we're in about late December, early January, and we're not seeing that muscle come up significantly above that 33.9. And remember, we've got to get it to 40.1 or higher. So then I started to have the conversation like, look, I know we're at 2,000 calories, but we still need to eat more. So the next goal was actually another 500 calorie increase to 2,500. Now this is where it became really, really challenging for her. And the reason was because, well, 2,000 calories already seems like enough. I just can't believe that I need more than that. But we had to increase it. And so after some education and encouragement, and we figured out a plan for how she could do this, she ultimately was able to bring her calories up to 2,500. Then what we see by March of 2020 is, of course, a little bit of an increase in muscle, but we're still a long distance from that 40.1. So believe it or not, we had to bring our calories up again to 3,000, again to 3,500, and we finally landed on 4,000 calories a day. 4,000, you heard that correctly. Now, she had not increased her intake. She was still doing that 90 minutes, 5 days a week, still taking 2 days off, and she needed to eat 4,000 calories a day. Now, let me address that, yes, it was really hard for her to get to that 4,000 because even after the 2,000, she started to have these thoughts of like, this is too much food. I don't need it. What are you talking about? This is exorbitant. But we had to remind her that her metabolism had jumped up a lot. And what we were seeing with the body composition is we were not seeing those improvements with muscle. And this is how many calories we needed in order to get her muscle to improve. So looking at this very bottom number here, you of course see that in September of 2020, finally, we got that muscle mass to 43.4 pounds, which is of course in that normal range. But this was after getting to that 4,000 calorie mark, and she had maintained that for about 3 months before September of 2020. So I wanted to point this out, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, because it is not unrealistic for this to happen with people recovering from their eating disorder. I know that that can be really scary and it can seem exorbitant. You won't have to eat 4,000 calories forever, but sometimes in this process of recovery, you will have to work on taking in more and more food until we can get your body fully healed, and then we can work on bringing those calories back down a little bit to maybe a more manageable amount for your day to day. This is why we always say work with a dietitian and a therapist, and ideally a physician as well in your eating disorder recovery, because working through this can be really, really hard, but we don't want you to get stuck at a calorie amount that doesn't work for you or get stuck in a place where your body's not truly recovered. Thanks for being here, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us any questions or comments in the comment section.